Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. My name is Oluyemi Adeosun, and tonight we'll be looking at a topic: unlocking organizational performance, strategies for effective talent management and development. And it's our privilege and pleasure having with us one of us as our facilitator, the highly respected, revered Aderemi Fakumoju. And I'll just read very briefly excerpt of his profile. Aderemi is an executive human resource and business transformation strategist. He is the director at Tizia Traffic Solutions and managing partner Outdepth Consulting. He is a result-driven professional with over 14 years of diverse experience spanning strategic human resource management, operational leadership, and technology implementation across telecommunication, technology, financial services, public sector, and also the entertainment sector. Tonight, he will be leading this conversation on the topic unlocking organization performance, strategies for effective talent management and development. Please, let's give it up for Aderemi Fakumoju. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Emi. Thank you for the amazing opportunity. Again, to be able to speak on this platform at HR Mentorship, I think that the work being done at HR Mentorship is just fantastic. Seeing the amazing number of human resource professionals that are all gathered, learning, sharing, and having the opportunity to be able to collaborate on different fronts just brings a lot of joy and, of course, a lot of results. And long may it continue. So thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for joining in on a pleasant Sunday evening. I would imagine that most of us are resting at home, or we're in transit, or we're in front of our laptops, or in front of our phones. Wherever you are, it's good to know that people are open to learning at this time of the day, and so we're just going to get into it right quickly, right? And we all work in one organization or the other, whether you're in a small organization or in a large organization, whether you're running your own business, whether you are, consulting, or you're a member of what is referred to as the gig economy. We're all in, one organization or the other, and managing talent and growing talent is everyone's cup of tea. Okay, so it's just that it's different depending on wherever you find yourself or the structure of the business that you find yourself. So the first question is to really ask ourselves, why is your organization or my organization in business today? Now, that question has two folds to it, right? The first part is, why is the organization in business at all? Okay, the today part presents the second phase of it, because organizations change, right? And there might be different reasons why your organization is changing, maybe just a new direction. But why is your organization in business at all? Because before you start thinking about managing the talent that will deliver on what, or the purpose, or the reason why your organization is in business, or to deliver on your organization's objectives, you even need to know why you are in business. Because that way you sort of have at the front, or you bear at the top of your mind, what the critical success factors are. So think of it this way. If, for example, Unilever, I think over the last 2 years, have announced, they're changing their business model, right? If you're a HR professional within Unilever, you already know that your work is cut out for you, because there are obviously things that you now want to begin to look at. Because for a 100-year-old organization to change their business model because they're trying to accelerate growth in certain areas, there must be things that they're looking at. Now, that is a large organization. A small organization can say, you know what, we have 10 stores spread across Ikeja because these are the people that we're looking at, okay? And this is what we're looking to achieve as a business, right? So if you're clear about what your business is doing or why you are in business, then you understand the kind of talent that you're either looking for from two perspectives: to hire or to retain, or in some cases even to help to exit your organization as you experience changes, as you see as we move on. So why is the organization in business today? Okay, because it's always very, very important. And there are things that helps us to guide or sort of answer that question, right? Because one is, what are your planned objectives that your company strives to achieve? You will popularly put that under a popular nomenclature called vision, right? So vision can be a long-term goal, and in some cases, that long-term goal, you break them down into molecular objectives that you can begin to sort of knock off one after the other. One thing would obviously agree with is that whilst you have that high goal that you're looking to aim for, these days you also have those goals that are medium or more or less short term. So how clear are you about what your organization is trying to achieve? In some organizations, there are no planning sessions. Some organizations skip the whole, we want to have our annual strategy sessions or media strategy sessions, and so it's almost like on a day-to-day that you get directions, and this often happens especially with SMEs, right? But you still have to pay attention to what the key objectives are, right? And it's very, very critical, because whilst in other larger organizations, those things are spelled out, right? You have to find what these objectives are. It's a bit of a harder work for you to do, but it doesn't excuse you anyway. But when you now find them and then you join the league of those people who work in more structured organizations that have what their objectives are, some would even draw out a roadmap. If you've ever seen tech organizations like Microsoft, for example, you may experience Microsoft Office 2020 X that you're using, but they've had that drawn out on the roadmap as far back as 10 years ago. So that makes it easy for employees to be able to see where they are going. Okay. Now, it's important that you know what your organization's planned objectives are, because that gives you information that is useful in so many ways that we will see, right? The other part is, what value is your organization providing? Okay, what key problems are you solving? Are you focused on solving? And you need to know where your organization is in that process. Okay, let me give an example. If you use a card to pay for a service today, there are so many things that happens between the time that you press your PIN in that POS, right? And when it sort of gets that information, that, oh, you have paid, and you're able to, take out your card and they print out a receipt for you. There are, in some cases, maybe 2, 3 organizations lined up in between that process, offering different values, to that process, and they've all gotten paid, but you have only just exchanged your ATM card for maybe payment for filling your tank. Let's put it that way. Okay, so if you know where your value, what value your organization is delivering, it's easier for you to be able to focus on the kind of talent you need to deliver on that value. Because you can't really just, spread yourself out there, let's put it that way, right? Oftentimes we find that people are trying to be so many things to so many people, and the same way businesses are trying to be so many things to so many people. And for HR professionals, it's really, really critical that we know what the value is that our business is trying to solve. What gaps or products are you trying to fill for? What type of service, where are you specializing on? Which niche are you specializing on? When you think of niche, for example, you would sometimes find some stores that are serving more than one niche, right? So if you think of the banks of the time that UBA had, the special branches and then the normal branches, GT Bank had that. Or you have, retail stores that have stores in ShopRite and then have stores outside of maybe other places, right? And they have different customers that they are chasing, right? So what niche are you serving? Okay. What customer segment are you providing these services for? If I wanted to buy a Toyota Corolla, right? It's not a difficult thing, right? Of course, that's if I have the money set aside. I just go to a number of car shops, we inspect the car. If it's good enough, we're good to go. If I change my mind someday, and maybe God has now helped me and I'm thinking of buying a Rolls Royce Phantom, then that's a different ballgame entirely, because I can literally just make a call and then I have an account manager fly down to wherever I am in the world and come and find out whether I want the picture of a butterfly on my seat, right? So what segment are you providing that service for? All of these are so important because it helps you to be able to critically identify the kind of talent that you need to either hire, keep, or help to leave your organization, especially maybe during periods of changes, right? And so what key activities do you need to engage in to deliver value to your customers? Okay, what are the different things that you need to do as an organization? So when we think about this, you'd see an image in front of you now that sort of forms the structure. Okay, so you know what your organization, business purpose is, what the business strategy is. From the objectives, you have an idea about what the roadmap is. And when you hear roadmap, sometimes let's not break down some of these things. It's not, don't think of it as that it has to be like some really massive white paper. For some organizations, yes, if Google is going to release a roadmap, you bet it's going to be a very detailed, document. But for your own organization, it could be something just as understanding, okay, you know what, we sell meat pies today, and our meat pies are basically potatoes and beef, right? We want to sell chicken pie in 3 months, and then we want to sell lamb pie in 6 months. It could be that, okay? So just understanding that it doesn't have to always be very, detailed and massive, and something that is very complex that cannot be adopted at small and medium business level. It could be, okay? Now, when you have clarity over these things is when you start to dovetail into you developing what your people strategy is, right? Now, when I say develop, I use that carefully because some of us are already working in organizations, right? So you can also use the word review what are people strategies. You can also use the word reevaluate what are people strategies, okay? And try to understand, right? What's the culture, what's the organizational structure or job design? What are the processes? What are the enabling technology? What are the things that we need to put in place that helps us along the lines of HR pillars or pillars or different functions to deliver on the organizational plan? Now, there are those HR pillars that always happens. If you're a HR professional, you're going to recruit, right? You're going to pay salaries. You're going to get involved in the performance management process, at some point or the other. You're going to be involved in some training planning and implementation and all that. But you see, before we get to that part, is to be able to ask ourselves that in this overarching people strategy, right, is the culture right to deliver on our business objectives? Are we properly structured? And by structured now, it could be what works for your own organization, right? Are the jobs properly designed? Okay. Because before you say you're looking for a talent, if you think about it as a car, right? Most people forget the fact that when you are choosing to buy a car, you're not really buying a car, you're just buying mobility, the ability to move from point A to point B. You only want to arrive with AC, and somebody else wants to arrive with skyline as the roof in their car. At the end of the day, we're just buying mobility. Okay. So if you think about it from an organizational perspective, then if you're going to deliver on objectives, right, you need competencies to deliver on those objectives. Now, competencies are, of course, skills, behaviors, all fused into one. If I say that I'm able to speak publicly effectively, it probably means that I'm able to maybe prepare PowerPoint slides, I'm able to stand in front of people, I'm able to read the room, I'm able to connect with the audience, and I'm able to, facilitate a session. All those things are like skills all combined, and then you say, okay, you have that competency, right? And so what are the competencies that you require across your organization to deliver on your business objectives? Again, this thing called competencies are things that we always, we say it a lot. There are a lot of HR buzzwords that we say a lot, but when you really look at our day-to-day operations, they don't really reflect, right? So some of us have JDs by which we recruit, you just come up with a JD, you recruit for that role, and then the person is in the job, and you just take it from there, right? But there are things that should precede that, right? That particular job that person is going to fill, what are the competencies? What are the things that are required to be able to deliver on that job? That sets the tone for everything else. The bulk of your talent management work starts to go from there. So from understanding that, do we have the right culture in place? Do we have the right structure? Do we have the right processes and enabling technology that helps us to deliver across HR different pillars, right? Okay, so very, very critical for us to know. Now, if we're able to do this, then we're able to get the value from having the right talent within an organization. Like this slide starts off, it says our talent isn't just an asset, it's a competitive advantage. right? So it's very, very critical for us to know that, because when you have the right talent in the room, you're able to accelerate growth and innovation. There are times that, and I'm sure many of us have got stories of where, you get to a great level in an organization and somebody just says, well, we can do this, can we try this? Can we try that? Can we bring things together? And then we're able to move forward. I remember in 2008, Glow used to sell this dong, the internet device, the one that you plug that has the USB, whatever. You just plug it to your system and then you're able to access the internet. And then I was at the time working for a very fast-growing Microsoft partner that deploys ERPs, Microsoft Dynamics to be specific, the NAV and AX models. And I just realized at some point that, we had all these functional and technical consultants all on the payroll, but everybody would be on site. So we had an office. And in our office, we were running AC, we had everything, and we had 2 admin staff that would sit in the office. And some of these projects will run 8 weeks, some 3 months, some even longer. There's some that run into a year. So one day I asked my boss that if these 2 admin staff do not come to work here physically, and were able to buy the Glow thing at the time, and they just work from home, for example, can we, what would be the advantage to us? And at the time, I will not mention the organization, but one of the largest tech recruitment businesses was looking for an office at the time. And so they approached us and we loaned them our office at Kakawa on the island. And then they had to use the office for about 6 months. We didn't show up in the office for 6 months. We only pay our Glow, this and that, with the permission of, the landlords and all that. We had sort of loaned the office to this recruitment tech organization that is still, fully functional now and very large. And that way we're able to save money. Now, that would not have come up if you don't have, again, the right kind of people in the same place, right? So in your organizations, you've probably heard people telling you, okay, can we try this? Okay, can we try that best to solve this? When you have the right talent within your business, you're able to drive market leadership, you're able to boost innovation, you're able to enhance customer value, you're able to provide value to people because you have people who are passionate about what they do. They don't want to sit on the sidelines. Sometimes they just want to get in the ring. They go beyond, the responsibility matrix that you have given them, in a way not to overshadow or to push others, but just primarily just to collaborate. Primarily, the other thing as well is that you're able to drive financial and operational excellence, right? The example I gave earlier saved us money, from operational expenses, right, and lower the cost. But then was our own first trial and first baptism of working from home or flexi, working arrangements and all that, right? So you have those advantages that are available to your organization. You're able to secure future readiness and mitigate risk because you have a group of people that are passionate. They're willing to try new ideas. You have the ability to be able to, within your own organization, right, grow people that can start to take up, roles because they are interested in the success of the organization. But all of these things don't happen by chance. Okay, they don't happen by chance because talent can read the room. They know, and that's for those the kind of talent you want to have within your organization. They know when they're in the right place. They know when their voices are heard. They know when you are willing to work with them, help them grow, help them learn. They know all that. Okay, so it's very, very important that whilst we have, these very clear advantages, it's important for us to understand that the right talent, they're very, very aware of what they want, and that's why here on this level, we're saying the war of talent is over. The right talent won, and their victory is more decisive than ever. Because the truth of the matter is, right now you've got options. If you're a high performer or you're a very good employee wherever you work, you would know if you, of course, again, there are a number of components that work with that, right? Visibility and all of that, right? You would know that, yes, the ball, you've got more options in your role bucket, right? So we've got to understand that the right kind of talent, the talent that we want to be able to effectively manage and develop, have options. Okay, and they have more options than we do because, again, as businesses, we don't have limitless pockets, right? Okay, so very, very important. And so with that in mind, then what are the things that are impacting how we are managing talent today? So first off, you have the multi-generational workforce expectations. Most organizations today have people from, whether you call it Gen X, baby boomers, millennials, you just have the mix, right? And you have to be able to manage all of them. They all have different expectations. Communication doesn't work for all of them in the same way, right? Some people are able to quickly jump on Slack, have chats about a project, close it out, and it's done. Somebody else says, okay, if you don't send me an email, I'm not going to touch that thing, right? So you've got different things that works for different, generations. Again, you've got the full remote and hybrid work models. Now, I'm sure some people are thinking, okay, well, just remote and hybrid. No, it's full remote and hybrid because some organizations are saying everybody come back to work. Some organizations say, okay, you know what, we can sort of have remote, and some are saying, let's have mixed models now. So you can have a lot of scenarios here, especially when it comes to recruiting. You're beginning to see where now, I heard one, I think about 4 weeks ago, where a fantastic talent that had gone through the recruitment process didn't take the job because the office was on the island. And that's all, right? So it's not that she's not good enough, she's good enough, she just doesn't want to work on the island, right? You have people who, during recruitment processes, are saying, you know what, I have to say this up front. This is part of the negotiation. 3 days in the office, 2 days off, right? So you've got all that dynamics that you have to deal with now. And then you've got skills that are, getting obsolete very quickly. Whether you're thinking of how technology is helping or whatever else is influencing that, a lot of the skills that, people have had over time, gathered, did sweat to certify themselves in are beginning to get gradually, washed away, right? And then you've got the gig economy integration. Now, with the gig economy integration also presents another significant challenge. So you have a lot of people who are very, very coming out of universities, graduating and saying that, you know what, I don't need to go and work for a 9 to 5 organization. I can just get online, offer my service, as a freelancer. I can, provide projects or work on projects for multiple organizations at the same time, right? And I just deliver it. It's a quick project, you pay me, and that's it. So I don't need to, work for, an organization and be stuck on a single contract. And for you that you're looking for, really good people to work within your organizations, you're beginning to find that that's becoming a challenge, right? Some businesses are saying, you know what, no problem, stay as members of the gig economy, I would hire you, right? And so, okay, if you're going to hire them as well, how do you integrate the work that they do, into the general work that is being done within the organization? There's just the balancing of all that needs to be done, right? And then organizations, of course, that you have the rapid digital transformation happening across the world, right? And like we said, time and again, increased competition for the right kind of talent. And then more importantly, that demand for agile skill development. How do I grow my people? How do I help them to adopt behaviors that gets them to the point where they are constantly in search for learning, right? So those are things that are pressures of most HR professionals, organizations, businesses, business leaders, because again, some of these factors are not, they don't leave you any chance. They impact you wherever you are. Okay, so pretty much that. So let's look at a simple framework, right, when it comes to talent management, and start to look at how do we start to manage some of these things that we've talked about, right? So the impact talent management framework starts off by saying that, you know what, within your organization, right? If you know what your organizational objectives are, again, remember, you've got the long term in view, and then you have the short, the medium term, right? So what are the current and future talent needs? Okay, so identify that through strategic workforce planning. And it's very simple, not simple. I mean, it's straightforward. Let me put it that way. I think that's even better. You have to be able to come to terms with the fact that from time to time, periodically, you have to always check within your organization, do I have the talent now to deliver on what we need, or what our next objective is? And then, or do I have to bring in some people, or do I have to, grow the people within? Again, with talent management, it doesn't always end up with acquisition. There's the development aspect of it, right? So you need to identify that. And when you identify whatever competencies or needs that you have, then you measure it. So say, for example, you've identified some competencies that you need to deliver on objective X, right? And then you start to measure to say, okay, do we have these competencies in-house, right? Do we need to bring people from outside, or what do we need to develop? What do we need to do to start to help our people within the organization to grow, right? Okay. And then, of course, when you know what the gaps are after you've measured, you plan for it. Okay. By planning means that you start to take action. Okay. So, what are the developmental pathways that we can bring up that would impact us either as an individual or either as for individuals or as an organization? Okay. And then we activate whatever learning interventions that we have identified. Now, when you think of that, right, when you have activated whatever plans that you have come up with, it's very critical then, therefore, that you check to be sure that what you've done is helping you to plug the gaps that you identified when you measured, right? And is helping you to achieve that state that you want to be when you identify the competencies you need for your next objectives, okay? And then, of course, through that, when you keep repeating the circle, you have the opportunity to start to develop some level of organizational capability. So let's use an example. So a technology firm needed to pivot from hardware to SaaS. So SaaS is software as a business, business model, right? So think of it this way: you're a tech company that just sells stuff. So no matter what you do, your goal is to, I want to sell maybe printers, I want to sell maybe servers, I want to sell laptops, I want to sell whatever it is that is that hardware that you're selling. Now, when you have relationships with your clients, right, and you've done all your consultative selling, it still ends with a sale, and then you check on with them if you, maybe if you provide some sort of repair, whatever, you follow up with them, they refer other customers to you, and that's pretty much what that cycle looks like. But with SaaS, that's a completely different thing, because when you're selling software as a service, your sales process now is completely different, because now you now need to understand business process, engineering, right? Or business process management. Oh, so this SaaS platform that we have, how effective it is, how effective is it if I'm going to sell it to an organization? What do I need to look out for? What are the key processes that we're looking to automate? What do we need to be able to deliver this SaaS model, this SaaS service to them? And then you have things like customer success start creeping up, because if I sell it to them, unlike the PC or the technology stack, right? Once I'm done selling, what happens next? Then they start using, but for the SaaS one, the customer success team has got to jump onto the road now and help to make sure that whatever it is I sold is delivered to the customer, right? So selling hardware and selling software as a service, two completely different things, right? So think of it as an organization, a technology firm trying to do this, right? And then they notice, okay, look, there's a critical gap in recurring revenue sales skills. Why? Because for SaaS, it's a subscription model. So we're used to selling stuff and then saying bye-bye, hello, bye-bye, we stay in touch with you, please recommend us to other people, and then we come, we sell, and we're gone. But now, you now need the recurring, sales. That's where you start to have your ARR and MRR, monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue, all those technology acronyms, or that starts to come up in that space, right? So by the time they looked at that and they said, okay, you know what, that gap is there. So they assessed the current system and realized, you know what, only 15% of the SaaS team, our sales team has SaaS experience, or maybe one or two people had worked with SAP before, somebody had worked with system tech before, so we only have 15%, right? What they then did was, you know what, let's create development pathways for those high potential reps that we have noticed, right? And then start to look at how can we bring in one or two people, to come and join the team, right? And then, of course, the moment they have the plan, they activated that by launching a certified SaaS sales training program, so that if there are people within the business that are already doing well, but we can then help them transition from hardware salespeople to SaaS salespeople, then let's go ahead and do that, right? And then, of course, they track the conversion rates and the sales cycle length of the trained reps. So obviously with SaaS, you have the KPIs you measure, they're able to track all that. And then, of course, at the end of the day, they're able to increase recurring revenue by 40% in 18 months. and they reduce new hire wrap up them. Now, again, you see it's increased recurring revenue by 40%. It's not like 100% or 120%. In 18 months, this thing takes time. Okay, so the idea here is just to give us like a sample of us following through with that, talent management framework and how we can apply it within our own organization. So when we think of what we've talked about so far, right? We've talked about where you're going from a business strategy perspective. Do you know what the business purpose is? We've talked about all that, right? We talked about the fact that you've got to have a talent strategy, or we started talking about it, to have a talent strategy that helps you get to where you're going, right? And that should cover a number of things. One is strategic alignment with business goals, right? Having that compelling and authentic employer brand, okay? Talk about all that. Having a robust talent acquisition and onboarding process, okay? Ensuring there's continuous learning and development within your organization, driving a culture of high performance and engagement, and then having that holistic total rewards, okay? So when we jump straight into it, right, we talked about the fact that it's important to have, regular workforce planning to anticipate future needs. And when we mentioned it earlier, we had talked about the fact that you need to take a deep dive into your competencies. So look at it from this perspective. Your competencies are divided into several things. The idea here is to just give you a high level of a number of categories you can look at. This may not apply to all organizations at the same time, but hey, you can adopt, and then of course localize, within your organization. So you've got the technical competencies, right? Now, for technical competencies, there are those things that are unique to the job. Okay, so they are role specific, right? Then you've got the leadership competencies, okay, that are behavioral, related. Then you've got the future ready skills, right? The skills and competencies that you want people to have, whether they're already in your organization or you're looking to hire them, because that saves you stress in the long run because of how rapid the factors that are, how rapid the organization is going to be changing every year or as we keep moving on. Again, we've said before that the rate of changes that are happening to organizations and impacting talent, no matter how slow it used to be, now is something you should expect on a consistent basis, right? Okay. And then, of course, you've got cultural competencies, the things that sort of help you see, does this person fit our own organization? Again, the caveat there is to not look for people to fit your organization and force them to fit. You have to have a balance of how they fit and how they also bring value into your organization. Because again, you want that freshness, the freshness of ideas, collaboration, suggestions that they may come up with, right? So then one of the things that a way to test what we've just said when we're talking about competencies is for us on this call, you could just, mentally ask yourself, what's one key objective that our organization wants to achieve for the next year, the next 6 months, or the next 3 months? What is it? Oh, I want to increase market share. Or we want to increase our digital footprint, or we want to increase our, our retail footprint, or we want to expand the businesses. We don't want to have a single site anymore. We now want to have, multi-sites to serve our customers wherever they are. What are those things, right? And it'll be useful for us to think about it and then give examples. So I'll share something. I think it was in 2022, right? Interestingly, when Access Bank and GT Bank have noticed, this rapid growth of all these other tech platforms, right? So Flutterwave, Paystack, and all those organizations that were providing different services and value within, the payment services value chain, right? And they're like, look, these guys are, gaining major strides and all that. And in 2022, Access Bank, I think, started with Hydrogen, if I got the name right, and GT Bank, I remember, is Squad, right? So Habari Pay, Squad by Habari Pay, established both as subsidiaries. And by the end of 2024, both of them had jointly, processed over 70, trillion naira in payments, for which they would have earned some form of commissions from, right? Now, imagine that you were there, in that room when they're saying, we're coming up with a subsidiary. This subsidiary is going to be providing back-end payment services, because these two subsidiaries that I mentioned, you rarely interact with them. They're like an in-between service provider to deliver on, payment services, right? So they're just in the back end, right? And you're in the room and someone says, okay, we need to establish this subsidiary to provide this service, So what are the top three talent capabilities you'll be thinking about required to achieve this objective, right? Your mind will be, running agog on, competencies around guys that have core specialization in tech areas from software development that understand payment services, and all those things, right? And the question would obviously be that if you're moving people from subsidiary to subsidiary, is this everybody that is ready? Are there people that you need to bring in as experts? Obviously, they know they will not have hired everybody. You get, so how do we ramp up the guys within? So it's good that we ask ourselves, after this session, right? You could even almost screen clip this and ask yourself, what's the one objective that your organization is looking to achieve over the next 3 months? And then sort of break down what are the cross-cultural, what are the top three talent capabilities that we require to achieve this objective. And ask yourself, do those capabilities exist today in our business? Who are the closest people to that? So if I measure who are the closest people to that we can help ramp up because they displayed previous, performance on their job, right? So again, for us to take a look at that. Now, important as well that when we decide that, okay, we need to bring in people, obviously for these sessions, for this apologies, bringing people to be able to now show up our team to be able to help us achieve our next objectives, then it's important that we start to consider a few things. Now, one is, develop that multifaceted sourcing strategy to attract diverse candidates, right? People from the idea of employees referring employees still works. Magnificent, right? Social media, all the platforms that you want to leverage. People are also even leveraging organizations that are beginning to provide work-ready employees, right? If you've never heard of a platform before, I know there's a project that someone is running called I'm a Graduate Now What. What she does is basically just allow graduates to come, register, take them through a number of weeks of preparing them for work. And after like 5-6 weeks, you're getting people who are a number of levels higher than just getting people off the fresh entry level market. You have organizations that also provide tech talent all over. So just essentially, whether you're hiring within the tech, whether you're hiring within the what do you call it, you're hiring within agro business, whatever it is, make sure that you're exploring different ways to be able to bring in people. Now, implement a structured and competency-based selection process. Look, when you hire people the right way, it saves you a lot of stress. I remember a particular story, I think 2 years ago, that sort of struck me in a very different way. Normally when they say they're hiring, when you get this whole structured competency-based interview questions, you see people just asking questions, an interview panel. Some organizations will take it a step further, and then they would say that you should do up a presentation, and you come and you present your slides, and then they'll ask you questions, right? And that has worked. I remember, I think it was Andela that came into Nigeria and then requested that, you have to come and work with us for some hours. I'm not sure it's Andela now. Yeah, I know a tech company did that, right? But then I noticed a particular recruitment from a particular organization that struck me in a different way. What they did was they had interviewed the first step, so they wanted to go into, testing competencies. So they contacted the candidate and said to the candidate that they would send a work sample. The candidate should pick any time. So the candidate picked 4 p.m. and they advised that this would take 4 hours. At the dot of 4 p.m., they shared a work sample with the candidate. The work sample basically had 4 tasks that you would typically complete if you were occupying that role. But all the 4 tasks were very detailed, and of course I can't, go through all that here, but I'll just give you one example. So they just simply said in one of the work samples, there's a professional that is traveling from a country, Kenya, to, I think, Bogota, right? And he needs to fly, start off first day. By the time he returns back to that Kenya, his entire flight itinerary should be 5 days. They listed the number of things they wanted the guy to do and all the extra details, and stated that you should make sure your plan is as real as possible, right? And then, of course, give us your answer. And what they were expecting was that you would literally get onto Google, search for flights. You would schedule the flights. You will look for hotels. You would look for hotels close to the venues because they actually gave venues right on Google Maps that was close to, where they expected the person to attend the event. They wanted you to plan the whole thing out. Now, they did that and then added 3 other work samples, making 4. And the expectation was that the candidate was supposed to return the response after 4 hours. Now, that was a couple of years ago. Even if you give that to someone today and you want to still leverage AI, it will still take you some time because of the human elements and the real life situations that they added. Now, when you hire someone who has gone through that kind of testing and the person comes out on the other side, you have saved yourself some stress. One of the things they asked, one of the work samples, was to write emails on certain, things, and you had to do some work before you arrive at what you would then write as the email. So you can't even just draft the email, right? So you would realize that by the time the candidate comes out on the other side, your learning and development plans have reduced because you have somebody who is closer to what you're seeking for, right? So it's very, very critical that we understand that having actual competency-based processes for hiring is only beneficial to us, especially as HR professionals. It saves you time and reduces your counselorship hours. Okay, so very, very important, right? And then, of course, create a comprehensive onboarding program that immerses new hires in the company, because when people want to come into the organization and they've gone through all that rigor to get through, how they come in helps and starts that journey and helps them to even perform. So if someone comes in and gets into a team and says that this is what is existing, they're very passionate about what they do, they go after it and make sure that it's done, then it's likely that that person would want to maintain that same structure. Okay, very, very important that we make sure that we adopt those competency and skill-based assessments, and then of course behavioral interviewing, right? Okay. So we also have a compelling employee value proposition. Now, when we hear employee value proposition, sometimes it doesn't have to be, again, let's think of it 2 ways. So you can look at organizations that have, really very drawn out employee value propositions. It's on their websites. When you interact with them, you start to experience it, and all that. For small and medium, businesses, you can also have yours, right? People can come into a small business and just be clear, just from how you communicate what the vision of the organization is, what you seek to achieve, how you want to work with them, what you are expecting of them, and what you promise to deliver to them whilst they're delivering on their goals, right? When you're clear about that and you are living that particular, value, or you are living the things that you have said, you are already creating a compelling employee value proposition. It's not in what is in a document, it's what you do. Okay, so you would find that with people, they would see through your lovely brands and all those things and get to connect with who you really are. Okay, so you need to be the first person showcasing that company culture, the leaders within the business, all carrying people along, whether they're still in the organization, whether they've been in the organization for a while or they're just coming in. Okay, and then of course paying attention to actively managing the organization's reputation on websites if you do have, and social media. Again, social media is becoming really, really critical. I don't know if there are people that when they see a job advert now, they will just try and find information. Now, it's not always that you will find a lot of information about a company, and it doesn't always mean that that's the fate of the organization. Okay, maybe they are good or they are bad. But the fact that if you don't find a lot of information, it just becomes a little bit riskier. You ask yourself, I didn't really, So it's important that we also, in the way that we can, manage, how we're seeing on the social media, except for organizations that cannot engage in such, and they obviously do. If, for example, you consult for maybe the public sector and you're delivering a service on behalf of a state, you're not really going to be seen publicly, advertising, because you're just making sure things are going on right at the back end. Okay, and then of course for growth and driving talent development, continuous learning is really, really key. Continuous learning that is leader-led, that is democratized within an environment where I know that I can learn, I can make mistakes, and I can move forward. Okay, because learning has gotten to the point where, before you had the largest university, YouTube, right? Access to everybody. If you layer onto that now, AI is the tools that can search, search the web, search YouTube and all that. You now have access to, the ability to find stuff very quickly and then begin to start to learn, even better. Okay, so we can take advantage of this in growing our talent, whether through structured learning programs, learning plans, individualized learning plans, or organizational, learning plans. Because again, when we say individualized, it could be that for someone to deliver on a job. If it's organizational, think of the example we gave earlier. The company is moving from selling hardware to selling software as a service. That's now an organizational move, right? And so you need people delivering on that across different departments. And so you're going to have to design, learning programs that cut across the organization. The point here is learning should be smart. Let's find ways to infuse different ways to learn, from being formal to experiential and social. You've had the 10, the 20, the 70, percent ways through which people learn. The point is this: within your organization, whether you've got, those fantastic tools where you can begin to build learning pathways that align with, the objectives you want the person to be able to achieve in tandem with the organizational objective. Okay, if you're in that kind of organization where you can build such structured learning pathways, then that's fine. If you're in, in a smaller organization, then you can also still leverage technology. Once you identify what the objectives are, you are able to see what the gaps are. Get onto YouTube. I always tell people, if you get onto, YouTube and you see Edureka or Simply Learn, they have those are two of the largest libraries, right, on LinkedIn that covers God knows how many topics. And it's not related, it's not restricted to technology. Okay. Create the support systems that help people within your businesses, right? Having the right mentors, coaches, learning groups, driving manager involvement. We're still battling this whole idea of managers being the first point of people management in organizations, and it's a big challenge for HR professionals, because we end up counseling and we end up guiding and we end up getting into the ring too many more times than we should, right? Again, it still has to be manager led. So getting the managers involved is really, really, important. And of course, when people are learning, it's important to have those regular check-ins, milestones, checks, having course correction when we feel, okay, we're going, out of what the goal is, and to start to bring people, to the goals. Okay. So like I said, you can leverage learning technologies, micro learning platforms, mobile learning. TileStack, for example, is a platform that if you get onto and you're trying to get people to learn XYZ, you just build up all the learning pathways. But that's paid for. You can use YouTube, you can learn, you can take advantage of whatever works within your organization. What is critical, though, is that learning is a critical part of talent development. And so is performance. Now, the same way competencies are critical, right, to being able to have the right people within the organization, whether you are assessing to see whether there are gaps or you're bringing in people. So is performance so critical, because another thing that we talk about, HR buzzwords, right? KPIs, OKRs, all those things, right? You still find out that part of the major challenges is that in that performance management cycle, setting clear and measurable KPIs is still a challenge, right? And those are things that need to be sorted, because those things form the basis of a lot of problems that impacts talent, right? Because when there's lack of clarity, when KPIs or OKRs, whatever work within the organization, are not properly set, communicated, what you find is that misalignment, right? And causes rancor between employees, line managers, the organization. It's important that people have that, maybe not perfectly clear line of sight, but obviously some form of clarity on the work that they're doing, right? So again, some old truths that still stay true. Implement a continuous performance management process, okay? That emphasizes regular feedback. Annual performance management reviews, biannual performance management reviews are things of the old. However, performance management itself is critical. Regular feedback that you then build into the biannual, the half yearly, and then the annual, of course, works. Okay. And then coaching and feedback. We talked about managers just a few seconds ago. It's still critical, for managers to be involved in this process. Okay. And then of course we need to recognize the wins, right? Recognize high performance in a way that is fair, that is transparent, that people can see, so that they know that the better you perform, the more you get. Okay. And sometimes it's not always about a reward in terms of money, right? I remember I used to work for a telco, which at the time was not very innovative, and they had impact awards, right? So those quarterly awards where your manager would really write a proper justification, and they would really take the pain to go through and compare your contribution with other people that are within different divisions. And then when they say that you have, you're this top performer, it's celebrated, it's announced. When you do that regularly, then you get maybe a book cruise, and sometimes if you now stack that, by the end of the year, you get a CEO award, and then if you continue, then you get, some cash benefits and all that. But it doesn't always have to be, cash, because again, businesses don't have unlimited pockets, right? And then of course, when people are not performing as they should, you have that critical, clear performance improvement process that helps them get back on track as quickly as possible. So just to talk about, again, another critical aspect of talent management is having that holistic total rewards, right? So here, a lot of organizations, we need to be more creative, right? Because this is not going to be a conversation that just has to be about money. Okay. There are ways that we can offer competitive and fair compensation based on what you have, right? And then there are ways you can offer some benefits, right? That helps employees feel, what these people are thinking about me, right? They care about me. I remember there was one year in a tech company, we were trying to increase salaries and we didn't have enough budget to do it. What we had, the gap that we had was so small. And so while we were discussing, we just thought, can we use that money for subscriptions? So this was the time when, subscribing to things like Spotify, Apple Music, and Netflix was a thing, right? And then at the next town hall meeting, we just sort of let the employees know, look, we're working on the salary, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, like not in the next 6 months. But what do you guys, we're thinking about, having a subscription pot where you have X amount of money, and it wasn't a lot, it wasn't up to 50,000, and you just sort of, you're able to leverage that to pay for your subscriptions, and people jumped at it. Some people used it for learning platforms, some people used it for, and that helped us ride the wave for some time. So it's not always going to be, monetary things. Sometimes it's just benefits, right? Sometimes it's recognition. Sometimes it's moving people from roles to role, even if it's lateral, to just give them that, to grow their span of influence and help them grow, just to be able to manage, as you go along. But where you can, by all means, please reward employees appropriately, offer as fair as you can compensation that helps them, to be able to deliver on their objectives without having to worry about, other things. Okay. So to start to close this out, right, gradually, we now need to think about what the leader's role is, because we talked about managers being the first point of what you call it now, people managers, right? But that goes all the way to the very top. HR can come up with what the proposal is. You can come up with what, even if it is business aligned, even if it goes along with what the business objectives, are. But the leaders are the direct architects of the success of these things, right? Because they have an important role to play, right? They are the ones that set the pace for culture. They're the ones that set the pace for a lot of the things. And so that responsibility rests on the leaders, HR inclusive. Okay? Leaders are the champions of the culture. They have to be involved in articulating the why. In my 2 decades, I guess, almost, if not more, working across several sectors, one of the toughest things to do is to get leaders to sit and discuss and articulate the why. Everybody wants to talk about the money, wants to talk about this, and those are very, very critical by all means. But the things that helps the organization beyond that money, the things that help you can just stay 50 years, 10 years, 100 years, culture, right, are things that you will find that they just struggle to want to participate in, right? But they are the champions of culture. And as HR professionals, one of the things that has always been effective stakeholder management. Because until you get people to see, when you eventually get them to see, because some people won't, it's important to state that there's a percentage that won't. You are able to work with them that they become champions of that culture. They're able to model the way, they're able to set the tone, right? Sometimes they may forget, and maybe through some level of engagement, whether it's top down or from board level down to executive management, you're able to sort of get everybody back on to the track, right? And that takes us to the next point. Leaders are still the coaches, the first line coaches for performance and growth. Because think of it this way, if they're the ones that are involved in this whole competency development, they're involved with performance management, they're involved in the appraisal and the learning and all that. So they have that first line of information about every employee that they provide leadership support to or provide leadership oversight to. Okay, so it's important that that mentality shifts from being a boss to being a coach. The ability to identify and create those growth opportunities within their teams, provide timely feedback. Very, 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 very critical, right? And then, of course, they're able to be the ones that are identifiers and advocates for talent, right? And most of us would have probably seen this before, where you work in an organization and then there's this head of department that the people there, these people or her people are always going for training, and they're always being properly represented, and they are doing things the right way. I'm not talking of those ones that don't do. I mean the ones that actually are delivering on their departmental objectives. But you just find that these leaders are advocates for their people. They don't joke with their people, right? And that's the standard that we want to start to get our people to, because and remind our leaders that they have to be, because they play such a critical role in growing the people and growing what will then from the next level of leaders within our businesses. So it's important that when we start to think about, developing our talents from and managing talent effectively, from strategically aligning, our talent to what the business objectives are, to growing, them, to recruiting the right kind of people, because we're very clear on what our competencies or what the requirements for the role are, to paying them a fair compensation and managing, non-monetary recognitions. We're able to start and, of course, drive performance through effective methods, right? We're able to start to effectively manage our talent, to deliver on what our objectives are, because again, that's the whole purpose of all of us, being members of whatever organization that we all belong to. Okay, so at this point, it would be great to hear from everyone. If you've got questions or got contributions, it would be great to hear from you. Okay, so I see a question here. With AI and digital platforms becoming central to talent management, how can HR teams maintain a balance between automation and human-centered development experience? Okay, so there are a number of things that comes to mind there, right? Because if you want to unpack that, you have to look at a few things. One of it is that AI is going to remain something that we'll talk about consistently, okay? And of course, helps HR to be able to deliver on some objectives, right? So in previous times when you're automating within HR processes, you are able to use maybe ERPs or HRIS if you're more specific and you're not using an organizational-wide, system. But one thing that you would find is that the interpretation of your business strategy, right, into what would be competencies and what will be skills that you need for a job still requires you as a HR to be able to understand what that strategy is and to be able to break that down. So that's one. Two is that you can leverage AI for some of the tough parts of what we talked about. When in the past when you talk about competency development, it's like people just think about it. This is OD work. Like you have to be organizational development specialist to be able to address this. You can leverage AI to be able to do those kinds of things, right? But when it comes to bringing that down to now engaging with the employee, sitting and assessing, the employee during your recruitment process, right? AI can also help you to, for example, if I let me give you a practical example. If I have a job ad, right, and I receive 200 CVs, I can actually just put it on the platform and put the job ad by on that same platform and just say, please, can you just look through all the CVs and give me the CVs that most represent, or can probably fulfill, the roles that I'm looking to, or this particular role I'm looking to fill. And I can also, take HR through. I can use AI to do that, right? Now, but when you are balancing it, you also have to still understand that there's still that human connection, okay? The human connection between you and the employee when you're interviewing them, when you're providing the onboarding experience, right? So you can have tools that are there providing analytics, but when people still connect with a body at work, right? Or someone who can answer questions about the organization. Don't forget that a lot of the AI tools that are also available now are still not, they're still very generic. So they don't have your own historicals, they don't have your own data, they don't have your own information. So the old body system still works, right? So you have all those things where you engage with those employees, again, even through your leaders, that leadership support, that leadership oversight that is provided, whether through you or through the leaders, still presents an opportunity for the human-centered development experience. Don't forget, there are also people learning on the job, right? When it comes to learning. So if you unpack it also from the learning perspective, there are people who are learning on the job that would learn from people, okay? Again, because AI also, depending on level of implementation in your organization, does not have the historicals, for your own organization. It does not have, you might provide a lot of knowledge and all that, but the hands-on experience, you can still get with the people. So that connection between HR, the leaders, and the employees still remains, right? And that's why the understanding leadership, empathy, emotional intelligence, coaching and mentoring are still going to be very critical skills for people to have in the years to come. AI can help you with the rest of the journey. You want to send out an email for employee engagement, you draft you something really nice. You want to, get analytics from your HRIs and all that, once you're able to plug and, sort out the API connections, AI would help you with all that. But all those human level connections, you would also still have to do. Now, at the end of the day, as HR, it's your own job to now balance the two, okay? You can't go to AI for everything. And in some organizations, it's actually even difficult for you to be able to use AI tools within your organizations, at least as of now, okay? I hope I've been able to answer your question, at least to some extent, yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay, another question from McIntoye. You can go for it, sir.
Okay. For organizations with limited budgets, what low-cost, high-impact talent development initiatives would you recommend to support employee growth? This affects majority of us. Okay, so again, because talent management cuts across a number of different HR functions, right? So let's use, for example, learning. We were talking about it earlier. If you identify learning paths that you want your people to go through, you have different ways to do it. Some organizations that have unlimited budgets would maybe call LBS. We've had organizations in Nigeria called Contact IESC, that's a big, massive business school in Spain, to come and develop local or develop specific programs to address, that learning gap. But you don't have a lot of budget, what do? If you've identified those learning gaps, Here you can collaborate with AI to create some sort of structure around curriculum for that, okay? And then get onto YouTube and sit with your employees, okay? Have a learning plan drawn out, even if that your learning plan is on Google Sheet. Get the curriculum, get the title of the YouTube video they need to watch, put a timeline to it, and then start to track what behavioral changes you want to see. If the example of Edureka or Simply Learn I gave earlier, you will find some topics that are run for 10 hours, 12 hours, which means you can give an employee maybe 1 month, go and digest this. And they have practical, what do you call it? Practical steps, steps you can follow in those videos, right? You have all these massive open online courses. You can take advantage of that as well. So you've got that, okay? You can also take advantage of mentoring and coaching collaborations, as a way of providing leadership, support for some of your leaders within your business. Okay, so let's use HR mentorship, for example. Somebody is in this HR mentorship. You have a leadership problem within your organization, and you're looking to have a leadership development program. You reach out to Mr. Yemi. Oh, Mr. Yemi, look, we're trying to just, even if it's something, a day, program and all that, somebody that can come and speak to us and all. He'll probably have 1 or 2 people that can offer to say, you know what, we'll do it. I'm not saying everybody will want to say they'll do it for free, but you've had seminars or webinars that have been held here that have talked about several topics, right? You can take advantage of that. You can even go onto the YouTube channel, right? The Mr. Yemi's YouTube channel, and you see stuff around those things, right? So you got that, right? So there are ways you can always look for creative ways to grow your people. When it comes to retaining staff in low, for smaller businesses, small and medium businesses, one of the issues that you typically will experience is somebody the high performer gets to a certain level. There is no place for that person to grow to again, and so the person is starting to get, frustrated, if I can borrow that word. What you want to do is speak with the person and say, can we maybe look for lateral moves so you start to grow your span? Okay, if you're not getting promotions, is there a way I can continue to help you to upskill? And I can help you to upskill by, linking you up with someone that you're able to, have a mentorship relationship with. There are ways that you can be creative. Don't think about it as, yes, we think when you have the space, use money, throw money at it, but preferably look for ways that you can, leverage relationships, leverage platforms, leverage, different opportunities to be able to grow your talent. Even if it comes to team building, for example, most people don't know that there are free platforms online that you can organize scavenger programs within your teams, right, on a Friday, and everybody's going to laugh and they're happy. Okay, you will not have spent money. In fact, the content for the day that you will use to brag for leadership, they are the ones that will create it using their phones, and you will not have spent money, right? So there are ways that you can try these different things. Now, I've only given generic examples. If probably we're able to talk one-on-one, I probably say, okay, for organization, we try X, Y, Z. But the goal here is this: if you look across the talent management process from recruitment all the way to, growing your people, career development and learning development and performance, there are creative ways you can do that. We gave the example around recruitment, right? Today, everybody has access. If, for example, when I talk about technology, everybody has access to AI tools, right? Get on ChatGPT. Take your last job ad that you put out, put it there. Put the 10 CVs you got. Dear ChatGPT, well, don't write dear ChatGPT, I'm just joking. Kindly analyze the CVs in relation to this and, sort of give me the best suitable candidates. It gives you that. And then you immediately tell it there and then. Please come up with, you can give some context, competency-based case studies and all that. You'll be shocked. They will give you, if you have a sample you found online, download like 3 or 4. Use it to train the AI. Take a look at these things, train yourself. Now look at this job ad. Give me a work sample. It will give you a couple. You may not like some of them. You may like some of them. Edit them. Put them in your bank. The next time the person comes for interview in your office, you tell them, okay, quickly complete this work sample while you're seated here. You too, you have done competency-based this thing now, even though you didn't use SAP SuccessFactors or something else. So there are ways you can be creative, within your organization. Okay. Okay, so thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. This has been highly insightful. We appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just all unmute now and appreciate our facilitator. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate your sacrifice. Thank you for sharing so generously.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your time on the call.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
For your
sir.
time.
Thank you, everyone.
you very much.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.